Welcome to the Punjabi Pod, episode 9. The Punjabi Pod is very excited to be partnering with PCHS Manitoba. Tune in monthly to listen to qualified professionals of PCHS talk about critical health and wellness issues uniquely impacting the South Asian community. Topics about drug and alcohol addiction, mental health, family conflict, and life as a new Canadian. PCHS volunteers are professionals with years of experience in health, education, and law enforcement. Get to know our social worker and outreach support worker, Ranjodh Dhaliwal, as he appears monthly to answer any questions you have. Please send any questions you have or inquiries to thepunjabipod@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at thepunjabipod. Welcome back to the Punjabi Pod, episode number 9. Continuing our partnership with PCHS, today we have with us Ranjodh Dhaliwal, who is a community support worker with PCHS. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, how long have you been with PCHS and how's it been going so far?
Well, I've been with PCHS since its founding in May of 2022. That's when Randeep came to us, all of us, with the idea of creating Punjabi Community Health Services. And I've been I was initially a volunteer, became a board member, and throughout our work, in terms of securing funding and whatnot, they created a position, which fortunately was me. It was a social work position. I ended up applying for the position, and on October 10th, 2023, I was officially contracted by Punjabi Community Health Services to be the initial hire of the organization.
Nice.
Great, awesome.
That's really nice. You're the first employee, like the full-time employee that's on there, right? Or is
No, I'm on a contract position right now.
Okay.
So the contract is for 18 and a half hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm working part-time with Punjabi Community Health Services. So we're spending the hours and right now are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, 12 to 6. And the reason why I made 12 to 6 as my office hours is because I want to be as anti-oppressive as possible in my practice.
Yeah.
And the thing is, some people work evenings, some people work days. So I figured if people working days, if they finish by 4:30 in the afternoon, I still have an hour and a half to see them after work, so they don't have to take time off work.
Yeah.
And for people who are working evenings, people, let's say they're working 4:30 to like 12:30, I could see them still between 12 and 4:30.
Yes.
The only thing that the only problem would be is if someone's working 12 to 8, and then we'd have to think of other alternative means to meet that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my idea when I initially came up with my office hours or my hours of operation. I wanted to be as like quote unquote anti-oppressive as possible, so that people don't have to leave work or anything like that when they come and see me.
Nice.
Great.
So tell me a little bit, I'm interested, I know a little bit about the work you do with PCHS because I'm also involved, and I'm interested in your community work, like what you did prior to PCHS, like your private practice. Was that you were doing full-time private practice, and what was your clientele like? What type of issues did you see?
Well, I've been practicing as a social worker for 15 years.
Okay.
Right? So in the last 9 years, between 2014 till 2023, I was working at Knoll Center.
Oh, okay.
I was working in the treatment foster care program where I was a clinical case manager.
Oh.
And in that role, what I was responsible for was working with kids who were high risk, a lot of high risk youth that were there according to the Child and Family Services system here, or the Child Welfare System in Manitoba. We mostly got level 4s, and the leveling in Manitoba is level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Level 5 is being the most challenging children to work with. So I got a chance to work with level 4 children, right? And my role there was to place level 4 children in our treatment foster homes, right? And I did that for 9 years. And when COVID began in 2020, I always had this idea where I wanted to be an independent practitioner. Some people call it private practice. I call it independent practice, right? And in my independent practice, what I decided to do was I wouldn't mind working as a therapist, working with people like on individual challenges and whatnot. It was something that I thought about when I graduated from my master's in 2011. I just never had the time or the energy to put any effort into actually creating it. That was one of the biggest gifts of COVID, whereas it allowed me it gave me time, it gave me a lot of space to create that independent practice. So I created the independent practice in January of 2021. Okay. And at that time, I was anticipating my clientele to be just like, I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way. I didn't think that my clientele would be Indian people. Wow. I didn't expect it to be Punjabi people, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Right. Yeah. And my very first client that reached out to me was a Punjabi male in his 20s in January 2021, saying, I saw your advertisement on Psychology Today, and you're the one. I've been looking for somebody like you for many years, and I finally found somebody that I can work with. Nice. And it was so cool having a Punjabi person, and for me, I was kind of taken aback. And then as time has moved forward, I've seen 60 something people now in my independent practice, and I was doing the demographic numbers. 15 of them have been Punjabi males. Wow! So a quarter of all my referrals have been Punjabi males. I'm not even counting Punjabi females. Yeah. Right. But one thing I'm picking up within a lot of the males that I'm seeing, I'm going to talk about the challenges that I'm experiencing. Yes. Right. Is that a lot of them are coming in with things like anxiety, depression. A lot of them are dealing with like alcohol dependence, marijuana use. And I think one of the other big challenges I'm experiencing is a lot of guys are working with like joint families. You know how in the Punjabi community, we have a lot of joint families and stuff, right? Yeah. With like Dai, Chache or Mastis, Mamme all living together in one home, right? And how that relates to like child rearing, right? I think that's beautiful from my own perspective, right? I just think that trying to relate that world into the Eurocentric Western world that we're living in here in Canada, there becomes a major culture clash. Yes. And I think a lot of people just don't understand how one culture relates to that other culture. Yeah. Right. And I think one of the things I really enjoy doing in my independent practice is really exploring the concept of being Punjabi. What does Punjabi mean to you? Right. And understanding that. And I think that one of the biggest like errors like therapists make who aren't colored is that they don't really take our color or culture or language into consideration when they are providing therapy. Yeah. And I actually learned that from a guy named Kenneth Hardy. Mm-hmm. And he was a guy that spoke I went to his presentation back in 2015. He's a psychologist out of New York. And I it really spoke to me, his presentation. And I think that if anybody's more interested in doing exploratory work when working with people, I think it's really important to understand those things. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see a gal mention kiti hai like this is ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਆ ਇਸ ਕਲਚਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਬਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਪਿਛੋਕੜ ਵਾਲਾ ਕਲਚਰ there's this balance. So ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਆ which I see in my practice too. So ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਕਰੀਏ ਲਾਈਕ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬੈਲੈਂਸ ਕਰੀਏ. What do you do? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ how do you create that ਜਦੋਂ joint families ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ conflict ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ whatever, right? I'm sure ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ issues ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ. So ਆਪਾਂ what type of goals do you create or what type of dialogue do you have with these individuals?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, to balance that because I know ਮੇਰੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ clinic ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ it's mostly ਉਹਦਾ medical side. ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਐਂਗਜ਼ਾਈਟੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਡਿਪਰੈਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਚੱਲ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੋਲੀ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਲਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਰਾਈਟ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦਾ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਉਧਰਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ. ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਰეკਮੈਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਥੈਰੇਪੀ ਕਰੋ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਿੰਗ ਕਰੋ ਇਹ ਐਕਸੈਪਟਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ ਇਨ ਆਰ ਕਲਚਰ. ਇਟਸ ਹਾਰਡ ਟੂ ਗੈਟ ਪੀਪਲ ਟੂ ਸੇ ਹਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਓ ਰਾਈਟ. ਲੋਕੀ ਫਾਸਟ ਕੁਇਕ ਫਿਕਸ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਛੇਤੀ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਠੀਕ ਕਰੀਏ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ. ਸੋ ਹਾਊ ਡੂ ਯੂ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਆਈ ਫੀਲ ਲਾਈਕ ਮੇਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੇ ਕਾਉਂਸਲ ਕਰਨਾ is tough, especially for me as a female. Like I'm a female practitioner in the community challenging their thought process, right? Most of the time I'm younger than them. So that's like, whoa, where does she come from? Huh? So ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ?
That's a really good question, Kenny. ਰਾਈਟ ਮੇਰੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਸੱਭਿਆਚਾਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਕੱਢਣੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੱਢ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਏ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਚਾਚੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਲੁਕਾਤ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੀ ਰਿਸ਼ਤੇਦਾਰੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਐਂ ਪਾਲਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਛੇਤੀ ਮੈਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦਾ 40 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ 40 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀਰ ਜੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਛੇਤੀ ਠੀਕ ਕਰ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਵੀਰੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ 40 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਇਸ ਧਰਤੀ 'ਤੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੇਹਣਾ 40 ਸਾਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਤਾਲੁਕਾਤ ਆਪਣੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਆਪਾਂ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਭਾਲਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਮੈਂ 40 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਦਮਾ ਜੇ ਛੇਤੀ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ
ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਰਾਈਟ ਵੇ ਹੋਵੇ ਸਹੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਣਾ ਵੀ ਸਹੀ ਰਾਈਟ ਵੇ ਹੋਵੇ
ਬਟ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਬਟ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸੋਚੋ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਦਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੋਚ ਆ ਉਹ 40 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਣ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸੋਚਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਆਦਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਦਲੀ ਕਰੋ
ਹੁਣ ਹੀ ਬਦਲ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਥੀਮ ਆ ਆਈ ਫਾਈਂਡ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਥੀਮ ਆ ਈਵਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇਲਾਜ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਇਲਾਜ ਹੋਵੇ ਡਾਇਬੀਟੀਜ਼ ਹੋਵੇ ਬਲੱਡ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਵੇ 1 ਦਿਨ 'ਚ ਮੇਰਾ BP ਥੱਲੇ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਰਾਈਟ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਨਾਟ ਜਸਟ ਸਰੀਰ ਵਾਲੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਇਹ ਦਿਮਾਗੀ ਸਿਹਤ 'ਤੇ ਵੀ ਸੇਮ ਗੱਲ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆ ਲੋਕੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਛੇਤੀ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਇਲਾਜ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ ਰਾਈਟ ਬਟ ਆਪਾਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇਹ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਗਹਿਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਸਮੇਂ ਟਾਈਮ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਆ ਠੀਕ ਹੋਣ 'ਚ ਰਾਈਟ ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਟ ਐਲਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਕੀ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ PCHS ਦੇ ਰੋਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਕੀ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹੀਆਂ ਥੀਮਸ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਥੀਮਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੇਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਈ ਮਾਈਟ ਬੀ ਗਿਲਟੀ ਆਫ ਦਿਸ ਟੂ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਮੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੁੱਖ ਤਕਲੀਫ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮਾਂ ਬਾਪ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਫੋਨ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਹਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਮੇਰੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਸਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਦਿਮਾਗੀ ਤੌਰ ਸਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਐਂ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦਾਰੂ ਪੀਂਦਾ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਡਰੱਗ ਖਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਡਿਪਰੈਸ਼ਨ 'ਚ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਨਾ
ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਖਾਸ ਉਮਰ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਜ਼ ਇਟ ਰੇਂਜ ਵਾਈਡ ਆ
ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਰੈਫਰਲ ਸੋ ਫਾਰ 20 ਤੇ 35 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਦੀ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਕੱਢੋ
ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ what does that actually mean
anxiety
ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ
I've heard about right ਘਬਰਾਹਟ right
English translation was
no worries right ਇਹਦੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਉਹ ਕੱਢੋ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਡਿਪਰੈਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ
ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੋਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਉਂਦੇ
ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਚੀਜ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਰੋਲ ਹੈਗਾ PCHS ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਦੂਜੀਆਂ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਪਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਮਾੜੀ ਮੋਟੀ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਿੰਗ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੈਰੀ ਬਰੀਫ ਮੈਂ ਬਾਲਾ ਇਨ ਡੈਪਥ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਉਹ ਮੇਰਾ ਰੋਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਸ ਰੋਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ PCHS ਹੈ ਨਾ ਰਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਥੈਰੇਪਿਸਟ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਫਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਈਕਾਇਟਰਿਸਟ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕੀ ਪੁੱਛਣੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਈਕਾਇਟਰਿਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਆਇਆ ਵਕੀਲ ਲੱਭਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਵਕੀਲ ਵੀ ਲੱਭ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਅਤੇ ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਸਿੱਖਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਕਲਾਸਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਐਕਸੈਸ ਕਰਨੀ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਰੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਤਾਲੁਕਾਤ ਬਣਾਏ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ prisoners ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ on parole ਜੇ probation ਹਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਿੰਗ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਹਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਉਹ ਲੱਭ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹੇ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਵਿਨਿਪੈਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹੁਣ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੱਲੇ 2 ਜਾਂ ਥੈਰੇਪਿਸਟ ਇਸ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਲ ਮਾਸਟਰਸ ਡਿਗਰੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਨੋ ਮੇਬੀ 10 ਹੋਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਹਨਾ ਸਭ ਦੂਜੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ bachelor's degrees and whatnot ਹਨਾ so it's a very like untapped like market in Winnipeg. There's not many Punjabi speaking like therapists.
So if somebody does reach out to you and they have, let's just say, anxiety, you do counsel them, or you don't, or you just point them into a different direction where they can get that help?
Yeah, I find them resources, or just give them an idea that the reason they could be experiencing anxiety is because of these factors, and I'll do a quick assessment on them, right?
Right.
Like what family dynamic.
The family dynamics could be happening, right? Like, and I think that nowadays, I think the anxiety is just turned into one big giant buzzword anyways, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has anxiety.
Yeah.
Everybody says, I got anxiety. And I just think, okay, well, is it anxiety or is it nervousness? Is it just fear? Like, what exactly is this? What exactly is this identity, right? And I think a lot of us, we're all like dealing with this idea of perfectionism. Right, when we have to be perfect in order to be loved, right? And another person who I admire, Brené Brown, she talks a lot about perfectionism and how toxic it is, right? And one thing she always mentions is the thing with perfectionism is that's one of the reasons that I believe it's one of the major reasons why we're so anxiety driven. Because I think a lot of us feel that need to be completely perfect in order to be loved. Yeah. Right. And I think that, and I'm always kind of trying to figure out when we are talking to people with anxiety, what exactly is it that they're actually? Let me go back a little bit. I think we get comfortable in a place. Yeah. Right. And anything that takes us from that comfortable place to the edge causes anxiety. Yeah. So a lot of people, I think, generally speaking, in the way that we've been conditioned in our society here in North America, I think we've been conditioned to always be comfortable, right? Yeah. And the thing is, if you're not comfortable, all of a sudden you got anxiety. Yeah. And I even think about I'm not sure if this is too controversial to say or not, but even in schools nowadays, nobody finishes last. Everybody's always there. I hear about some of these soccer leagues where there's no score kept, right? Yeah. I just think
there's no competitiveness like that. No, it's not that because they want everybody needs to be equal, right? Sare equal hone chahiye ne. So they don't want to put the pressure on the kids, right? So there's no score count keeping up to a certain even I think it's up to high school.
Yeah, right? There's an age associated with that, right? Yeah. So I just think that. And one of the things is we want to keep people comfortable all the time, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying that I'm not. There's nothing wrong with, from my perspective, with healthy competition, healthy sportsmanship, right? Yeah. I just think the way that a lot of stuff has been structured, it's been to I think learning how to handle discomfort, learning how to handle a loss, is a big life lesson. Yes. And I think and I think nowadays in schools or with that no scores in soccer, I think what I think the message we're teaching people is, you can never be a loser. You can never lose, right? And I'm not saying you're a loser. No, but
I get what
I mean.
But there has to be an ability to tolerate a disappointment. Yeah. Because that's a very real part of life. We were uncomfortable growing up. No. We were there was discomfort.
Sorry. Yeah. No.
Yeah. It wasn't just this picture perfect world.
And that's one of the things, even when we're talking about Punjabi community, है ना, जब अपने Punjabi community मुझे वास्ते सोचिए, जेरे मुंडे है गया, जेरे करन चंदे है गया, majority, I'm not saying majority, I'm going to say there is a big number, जेरे माँ प्यो, they don't make them feel uncomfortable. Sorry, I keep hitting this. And don't make them feel uncomfortable.
Okay, माँ प्यो no uncomfortable नहीं करना चाहिए.
No. The माँ प्यो don't want to make the kid the munda,
because you know why?
To be uncomfortable.
This is a huge topic.
Let's just stick to the Punjabi Munde for one.
100%.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I have a point.
I didn't mean to look at you, but Punjabi, and maybe this is what you're going to say, but Punjabi Munde have a very low tolerance for like anything that's like maybe difficult.
Yes.
And like they just fall apart at the seams, it seems like. And I don't think our generation so much, because I think we were just raised in a certain hardened way.
Of course,
we were bullied like crazy. I can only speak to myself, like kind of bullied growing up.
Of course,
but we didn't like fall apart. I felt like the new generation, the 20-somethings, they're just like, they can't take any type of bad things happening. They go depressed or anxiety. It's just like, it just keeps going. And you can speak to that more. Maybe.
No, I would even say even sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I just wanted to add to that because because you deal with this obviously, but I find that it's a new generation, right? The new generation that grow up here because they never feel that pressure, right? Because obviously parents want good for their kids, they don't want to give them all that pressure. But then when something like a breakup happens.
Yes.
Right? And that's when they seek the depression. Punjabi Munde, like, that's where the loss, right? Because now you just lost a partner, but they don't know how to handle it.
They don't know how to handle it.
And so now they don't know where to go.
This is what we talked about. Sana nahi hai.
Coping, yeah.
Well, so coping turns to like something else.
The coping, I feel like, and the coping turns into substance use.
Yes.
Violence.
Not
good ways of coping. Very extreme, negative ways of coping. And this is just what I see based on my practice. But you might be able to speak to, like, for example, ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਆਂਦਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਥੀਮ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਘਬਰਾਹਟ ਕਾਹਤੋਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਆ? Is it because they can't talk to their parents? Is it because of work? Is it because of relationships? Like, what are these men?
Is there like a common theme?
which ਕੋਈ common theme ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ endorse ਕਰਕੇ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਕਿ like ਮੇਰੀ ਜਨਾਨੀ ਦਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਮਾਪਿਓ ਦਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਆ? Like, theme, is there a theme?
Well, if I could break into two different roles, right? I find the people that come to my independent practice for therapy, they actually have deep-seated trauma.
Okay.
There is a lot of sadhma there, right? And I think a lot of people that come and see me independent practice realize there is a challenge that's happening in their life which is beyond their understanding at this moment, and they want to get a handle on it, right? And a lot of those are like volunteer clients, right?
Yes.
Right? And those are the ones I think a lot of them have experienced disappointment and they're understanding the disappointment that they are experiencing, right? Whereas when I'm looking at my role in PCHS, whereas a lot of involuntary clients, I think it's mostly most of the times it's not the boys that are calling, it's their mapio that are calling, right? Yeah. Mapio are saying virji mena munda jade nashe bacha pa gaya hai na, abala daru pinda hega, right? Or you know, and then when you go to the homes, and when I've been to a few homes now, or when you have people come to the office, they're all describing issues of like this child was unable to like handle like disappointment, was unable, or the child has developed a psychiatric condition over time, right? Or you know, and I think some of that has to do with the fact that one thing about the Punjabi community, which is a gift and a curse, is that we're very hardworking people. Yes. Like our parents work their butts off, man. Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. They, you know, we were very fortunate. We got to live in very nice homes. We got an opportunity to have a majority of our education paid for us, right? We've had the fortune of having some of my friends' parents would even give them their credit cards to go out on the weekends, and my friend will put his credit card down and buy us all drinks all night long, right? Yeah. Like we've lived a very comfortable and privileged existence, right? Yeah. Right? But the curse behind that is in order for our parents to build all that up, they've spent countless hours outside of the home. Right? Yes. Yeah. They've spent 12, 15, some of my friends' parents, even like I look at my cousins now, they're spending hours and hours on the road, trucking, right? Or they're driving taxi, right? Or in our generation, we had parents who were like working factories, or you know, owning their own corner stores, right? The countless hours, all these hours that have been invested in building up the financial wealth of the family, right? Yeah. The thing though is the children they don't get their mom and dad to spend quality time with them, right? And I think and I also think that when our parents have an opportunity to spend quality time with us, we end up developing a thing called resiliency.
Yeah.
You know, they get a chance to spend time with us. And even us as kids, when I know Simi was just talking a little about like bullying, right? I remember myself as a kid, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the word Packy on this podcast, right?
Yeah,
kids calling me Packy.
Oh yeah.
Kids calling me Turbinator.
Yeah.
Kids saying
You got that?
I got that.
yeah, or people saying, what does Pee Wee Herman say when he walks in a room full of a bunch of Hindus? Connect the dots. You know, how those type of jokes I used to get, right?
Yeah.
Right? And these are the jokes I grew up with, right? And even then, coming home, I was unable to share that with my parents, right? So, like, I think a lot of us Indian guys can relate to that, right? And I think even look at the generation that came after us, the generation which I'm predominantly getting calls about, the initial question, right? I think a lot of them, they didn't experience the same level of discrimination, but I could see in their homes some similar patterns to some of the homes that we all grew up in. Our parents working long hours, the child was essentially left to raise themselves. TV raised them, or Dada Dadi may have raised them. Dada Dadi may not even understood the language kid's speaking. Yeah. So the Munda comes home, he starts watching TV, goes on their technology nowadays with the iPads or their cell phones, right? Or the friends might come over and Dadi have no idea what the friends are doing. So all the friends go downstairs. They might be like I don't know, smoking some marijuana. They might be drinking, you know, or doing whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then the kids end up developing connection with their peers. And it's like you have all these like immature care providers caring for each other, right? Yeah. So it's like me sharing big feelings where theoretically it would make more sense for me to share that with my dad or my mom because they speak English, like they understand my emotional language.
Yeah.
My dada dadi, they might understand emotional language, but they understand it in Punjabi. I can't even communicate with them, so I have this language gap that gets created, correct? So then you have these kids coming home saying, rather than saying I got bullied, I'm deeply hurt, I'm sad, I can't share that with anybody. No. So I hold on to that. So I develop a lot of shame.
Yeah.
Right? So I just think of myself as being a flawed individual. Like something's wrong with me. I shouldn't be feeling sad. I should fight more. So especially nowadays with a lot of like, there's a big explosion of the Punjabi community in Winnipeg. So I might be hanging with some of my Punjabi friends. If one of us does experience racism or discrimination, we're all drinking. We're like, yeah, we're gonna mess that guy up next time the guy says something to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're gonna jump this guy or something. Yeah. Then that kind of leads to the whole gangland pack mentality, which ends up happening, right? So
which
rather than
violence,
right? So rather than me having like a vertical connection with my mom and dad, I end up developing a horizontal connection with my peers, with others who also don't have vertical connections. So I have all these immature people all trying to raise each other. Yeah. And that's what
that's a really interesting point.
Yeah,
right?
But you know, Ronnie, one thing that I find interesting, so if I look at our childhood, you know, because I'm obviously related to Simi, like, so we were raised primarily by grandparents.
Yeah.
Sadi, nani, dadi, and then nana, pua, mama. E panjane si. So, sade parents with the countless hours, kade factory, kade idhar, right? But maybe, so मैं फर्क समझने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि आजकल के ज़माने च वो resilience जिसे तुसी कह रहे हैं ताकत, like शक्ति, अंदर वाली शक्ति kind of thing, वो आजकल के ज़माने च घटी है, जहाँ है नहीं है, let's say. So साडे ज़माने च, like I feel we're resilient. I feel like आपा उस bullying थानी, उना negative चीज़ां थानी, स्कूलां च खिलारा, उस टाइम ते आपा सिर्फ 3 या 4 गिनती दे पंजाबी न्याणे सी, उस स्कूल च. I remember it was horrid. It was traumatic beyond measure. But sade jo resiliency and everything came. Is it because joint families you know? The joint families nahi hai.
It could be. I think there might be another reason. I like to bring up this idea of social media, right?
Yeah. Because there's more. Fark ek cheez da nahi hai.
Yeah.
Kafi cheezan da fark hai.
A combination है ना. देखो जे कोई मेरे तंग करता स्कूल ले, है ना? जदों अपने जवानी से जब स्कूल जाते सीगे 3:30 बजे आप करे जा पड़ते सीगे, है ना?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
है ना? अपन कोई नहीं सीगा ये बंदा मैंने तंग करूगा बाद चों, है ना?
You just go home.
Oh,
कर जाके
And then you wait till tomorrow.
कल ਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਕਰ ਕਰ ਦੂੰਗਾ ਕੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਹਨਾ
Yeah.
ਪਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਂਤੀ ਮਿਲ ਜੂਗੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਘਰੇ
ਮੈਂ ਘਰ 'ਚ
ਪਹੁੰਚਿਆ
safe ਹਾਂ।
ਹਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਘਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਦੇ ਟੀਨੇਜ ਨਿੰਜਾ ਟਰਟਲ ਦੇਖ ਲੂੰਗਾ ਬੈਟਮੈਨ ਦੇਖ ਲੂੰਗਾ ਸਕੂਲ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਚੋਂ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਮਾਰ ਜੀ ਸਨੈਕ ਹੋਤੀ ਹੋਗੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਮੰਮੀ ਸਨੈਕ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਸੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸ ਹਨਾ ਸਮ ਹਨਾ
There was simplicity in that.
ਸਿੰਪਲ ਦੀ ਸੀਗਾ ਪਰ ਜੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਜੋ ਜਵਾਨਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਹੁਣ ਦਾ ਜਵਾਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਕਰੀ ਵੀ ਗਿਆ
ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ
ਕੰਪਿਊਟਰ
Yeah.
ਹਨਾ ਜੇ ਜਵਾਕ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਕਹਿ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਸਕੂਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਹੋਣਾ
Yeah.
it's going to continue
Yes.
into the evening ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੋਰੇ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇਸ problem ਵਿੱਚ ਫਸੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ
Of course.
ਹਨਾ white people are having the exact same problems in this sense as well with anxiety and depression as well too right
Yes.
they're also dealing with bullying
Because they're bringing it home.
bring it home right so like it's all of our children like I just it's not just like the Punjabi kids which I'm talking about right but all the kids are having this problem but when I say specifically Punjabi Monday I think Punjabi Monday it's due to the fact that we still have this sense of like patriarchy within our community
Yeah,
right
we've talked about
and patriarchy and misogyny where Monday are still considered like hey munda you know he should be like
इन्हें कोई problem नहीं होनी चाहिए.
इनको कुछ मांगते हैं दे दो right like I've had friends in university whose parents were buying them pretty fancy rides
Yeah.
right I had to earn my own fancy ride but like a lot of my friends they had the opportunity they were driving like really expensive cars back when I was 18 19 20
Yeah.
in university right but thing is that wasn't that same luxury I don't think was given to their sisters
No.
right so when I talk about the Monday still till this day get a little bit special treatment
Yes.
right so
Because of
that's
Monday.
yeah Monday right and when the initial question that we talked about was how come I'm seeing this I think it's also because we ignore a lot of the boys' issues
Yeah.
like you know he's just being a boy like you know that's if the boy is even developing like narcissism or something along those lines we're like don't worry he'll get better he's a boy he's going through something right but the thing is that same behavior is not tolerated from our daughters right it's like if it's like you know if a daughter is acting a certain way why is she doing that why is she acting that way right
It's true.
The bag
right
is
it is right
In the bag.
The bag
are
of
the-
yeah
So is that the solution? Because I know is that what you find? कि जो होन आजकल की है कि भी इन्हें problem है he's doing alcohol जो drugs कर रहा है इंदर जाके इंडिया बैक कर दो सही हो
That's
जाए.
the worst solution.
Okay, so ਇਹ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ topic ਹੈ ਜਿੱਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ briefly
Carson Heggie, I don't think that's a solution at all. I think
Oh,
I think
no.
I think the most
But we've
worst
talked about
thing.
how that's such a common solution. ਸਾਡੇ culture ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਇੰਨਾ common ਆ and ਅਗਰ ਵਿਆਹ ਅਗਰ problem ਆ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਅਗਰ ਵਿਆਹ ਆ ਤੇ ਬੱਚਾ ਕਰ ਲੋ. It's like they're turfing their problem to the next person.
Yeah.
So unmarried ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟੀ ਵੱਲ ਧੱਕ ਦੋ ਤੇ ਅਗਰ married ਨੇ ਤੇ ਵੋਟੀ ਤੇ husband ਦੋਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਵੱਲ ਧੱਕ ਦੋ. Like right it's just this transfer of problems like and that's the cycle. So ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਫੈਲਦੀ ਆ.
ਫਿਰ ਦੇ ਯਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ like ਅੱਜ ਮੈਂ ਰਣਦੀਪ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀ right ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਆ ਤੋਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਵਿਗੜ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਚਲੋ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਚਲੋ ਇਹਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਨਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੁੰਡਾ ਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਉਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ ਬੰਦਾ ਹਨਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਹਾਏ ਤੇ
ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਦੇ
ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ
ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਸੰਭੂਗਾ. This dialogue it drives me
that statement right there.
That-
I think a lot of the older generation too say that, and probably the generation that you're talking about, like their parents.
yeah
ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਉਹ he'll start
ਜਦੋਂ
figuring it out.
Yeah, it's like ਜਦ ਉਹਦੇ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਆ ਗਈਆਂ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਮਾੜੇ ਕੰਮਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਹਟ ਜਾਊਗਾ and it's like no ਉਹ ਮਾੜੇ ਕੰਮਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਕੱਢੂਗਾ because it's an ਆਦਤ and ਇਨਸਾਨ ਆਦਤ ਤੋਂ ਮਜਬੂਰ ਆ so ਉਹਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਬੱਚੇ ਕਰ ਦੋ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਆਦਤ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਕੱਢੂਗਾ. I have seen this.
Was that true like maybe way back in the day, like if guys actually got married, if they were doing some shady stuff that they would actually just fix it after they got married? So then
I don't think so.
like we should maybe ask, I mean, our dad, but like way back in the day, like because that obviously came from somewhere.
Where did it come from? Yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe it happened way back in the day and then it just kept happening. Because who would just come up with that?
So do you know what? Do you know also what you got to remember is this, right? Life expectancy has multiplied since the older days, right?
True.
And one of the major reasons we had arranged marriages, if we really wanted to go back historically, was we were thinking we have to procreate for the next generation, right? So that's why 15, 16-year-olds were getting married, because they were going to die by 40, right?
Yeah.
So people had to get them married faster so they could have kids, so they could start, and rather than have the kids date. There's no time for dating when your life expectancy is 30 or 40 years old, right?
Yeah.
You gotta get this guy married right away or this girl married right away.
Yeah,
so that's
true.
one of the reasons why arranged marriages were so popular within our culture, right? Even Europeans had arranged marriages with in their societies. Africans had arranged marriages, right? And I don't think people really realize that. I think nowadays people still think, yeah, you got to get arranged marriage. That's cultural. It has nothing to do with cultural. It has everything to do with the fact that our life expectancy was so short.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta get married, and that's how and the mentality. A banda vili dari lajuga hone bya karke. That was the whole point. At 16, 17 years old, you got to get the guy married. Yeah. He doesn't have time to develop habits or figure out things because his life expectancy is so short. He has to concentrate on get the house going, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, our life expectancy in I think Canada's like 76, 80. Yeah. I think our life expectancy is now like, where we think about it, we have lots of time.
Yeah.
So if I have like, I know your specialty is addictions. Right, and when I think about addictions, and I know I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate, right, and Gabor Mate, and even Peter Levine, who's another a trauma expert, right. And one thing they always say is, when somebody says I'm addicted to something, always ask, what's the pain? Because the addiction is always treating the pain.
The pain, yeah.
Right. So the thing is, when people say banda daru pinda, I'm like, okay, well that he must be in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this guy's actually going out, and I don't think anybody particularly enjoys getting drunk that often or drinking that much, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people grow up and say, you know what, one day I'm going to grow up and be a cocaine addict.
Yeah.
Or one day I'm going to start doing lots of crystal meth, because no kid from nursery to grade 12 that I grew up with ever said, I want to be like one of those guys that's an alcoholic drinking 2-6 a day, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's any of our real goals. What we do find is it becomes a coping mechanism to deal with pain, underlying pain that we have, right? Like jede bande de jade sadma hoya hai, right? Ona vaste sadma de ode bhi do type pa, right? There's two types of trauma. Trauma number one is stuff that happened to you, and the second type of trauma is stuff that didn't happen for you.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yes,
right? So so the thing is, when we have unresolved trauma and unresolved challenges, if I realize at 16 years old, after having that first beer, all that went away, I have experienced relief from that pain. It's like somebody who has a headache and they take an Advil.
Yeah.
They took an Advil, all of a sudden I got relief from that pain, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody drinking lots or doing lots of drugs. What I do think is wrong is the inability for us in this side of us or the inability of society to really accept that this person is really hurting. I think that's what's wrong. And I think if we had a kinder society, then that could go and reach this person and try to say, hey, I understand there's a lot of pain. If we could create more places where people can express their pain and share their pain, and where we can actually work with their pain, I think that's the cure to addictions, challenges.